All right, let's dive into the CJIS Security Policy.
Okay.
You've shared some documents with us, including the freshly released version 6.0.
Yeah.
And our mission today is to unpack what's changed from version 5.9
Right.
and really kind of get to those golden nuggets that you can actually use in practice.
You're absolutely right. This isn't just another policy update.
Right.
It's a major shift in how we approach security for criminal justice information.
Yeah.
Imagine this a world where a simple oversight in an old agreement lets sensitive data slip through the cracks.
Right.
Version 6.0 aims to shut down those vulnerabilities.
Okay, so it sounds like we're talking about more than just, tweaking firewall settings here.
Right.
What kind of changes have they made to the overall structure of the policy itself?
Well, first off, you'll notice they've completely revamped the executive summary,
Okay.
the introduction, and even how they define roles and responsibilities.
Okay.
This signals a move towards clarity and a more hands-on approach.
Yeah.
Especially for IT folks like yourself who are implementing these security controls.
That makes sense. Instead of just a dense legal document, they're trying to make it a practical guide.
Exactly.
So let's get into the specifics.
Okay.
I know one area that jumped out at me was the changes to auditing.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Remember how V5.9 focused on reactive auditing,
Yeah.
mostly responding to incidents?
Yeah.
V6.0 flips the script,
Okay.
demanding stricter logging of events,
Okay.
longer retention of those logs, and better protection for the logs themselves.
Got it.
They're really emphasizing proactive auditing to prevent those incidents from happening in the first place.
So it's not just about figuring out what went wrong after a breach.
Right.
It's about building those safeguards from the start.
Exactly.
What does that actually look like for someone managing an IT system?
Imagine your audit logs are now like a high security vault.
Okay.
You need to document exactly who has access, what they can do,
Right.
when they did it, and for how long that information is kept.
Got it.
And this applies to any system where CJI lives from your databases to those mobile devices officers use in the field.
So no more set it and forget it when it comes to auditing.
Right.
We need to be actively managing those logs
Absolutely.
and ensuring they're protected just as well as the CJI itself.
Exactly. And it ties into another key change.
Okay.
How V6.0 handles system and information integrity.
Okay.
Remember those good old days when a simple antivirus scan felt like enough?
Uh-huh.
Not anymore.
Okay.
They're calling for robust layered defenses.
Okay, give me an example. What kind of layered defense are we talking about here?
Let's say you're implementing a new software system that handles CJI.
Okay.
V6.0 wants you to go beyond just scanning for malicious code.
Right.
You need to think about real-time system monitoring,
Right.
robust security alerts that actually flag suspicious behavior,
Okay.
and ensuring the integrity of the software itself.
Yeah.
You have to proactively defend against increasingly sophisticated cyber attacks.
It sounds like they're really pushing for a security-first mindset at every level.
Absolutely.
And speaking of expanding that security focus, there's a whole new section on supply chain risk management.
Yeah.
Why is that such a big deal in V6.0?
Think about all the third-party vendors and contractors that law enforcement agencies work with.
Yeah.
Each one is a potential entry point for attackers.
Right.
V5.9 was pretty relaxed about these relationships.
Okay.
But V6.0 demands those formal agreements
Yeah.
and documented security assessments for anyone who touches CJR.
Right.
It's about recognizing that a weak link anywhere in the chain can compromise the whole system.
So no more relying on a handshake and a promise.
Exactly.
We need concrete agreements and proof that those partners are meeting the same security standards.
Precisely. And those agreements need to cover every form of CJI exchange, from those emails flying back and forth to those complex web services integrating systems.
Right.
No matter how you're sharing that information, those security protocols need to be locked down.
It's like V6.0 is drawing a much tighter circle
Right.
around CJI,
Yes.
making sure it's protected at every point in its journey.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about external partners.
Right.
Internally, they've tightened the screws on account management as well.
Absolutely. Remember those shared accounts or leaving those admin privileges wide open?
Oh, yeah.
V6.0 shuts that down.
Okay.
They want those clear, documented policies that define exactly what types of accounts are allowed,
Yeah.
who manages them, and what they can access.
Okay.
No more ambiguity.
Right.
It's all about reducing that risk of unauthorized access.
So we're talking granular control.
Yes.
Every user, every account needs to be accounted for and managed proactively to minimize those risks.
And it's not just about setting up those accounts correctly. It's about what happens after they're created.
Okay.
V6.0 is mandating those immediate disablement of those high-risk accounts if there's any suspicion of compromise.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Think about those accounts that have access to the most sensitive data.
Right.
Those need that extra layer of protection and swift action.
So if we detect suspicious activity, we don't wait around to investigate.
Right.
We lock those accounts down first and ask those questions later.
Exactly. It's about minimizing the damage.
Right.
And this proactive approach extends to wireless access as well.
Okay.
V5.9 had some guidelines, but V6.0 makes it crystal clear.
Okay.
Strong authentication and encryption for wireless access are mandatory.
Got it.
No more connecting to those unsecured Wi-Fi networks with those agency devices.
That's huge, especially with how much we rely on mobile devices these days.
Right.
It's like saying the days of grabbing any available Wi-Fi signal are over.
And they're going a step further, requiring that wireless networking is disabled when not in use.
Okay.
It's a simple but crucial security measure that many people overlook.
It's like locking your front door even when you're just stepping out for a minute.
Exactly.
Simple but effective.
Right.
And this focus on securing those connections extends to those external systems as well, right?
Yes.
Those systems that might be accessing or processing CJI outside of the agency's direct control.
Absolutely. V6.0 is incredibly strict here.
Okay.
Using an external system to access or process CJI is only allowed after you verified their security controls
Right.
or have those formal approved connection agreements in place.
Right.
It's no longer enough to trust that those external systems are secure.
Yeah.
You need to prove it.
So no more blind trust?
Right.
We need documented proof that those external systems meet those CJIS security standards.
And there's another important change.
Okay.
V6.0 explicitly prohibits the use of organization-controlled portable storage devices on those external systems.
Oh, wow.
This adds another layer of protection,
Okay.
preventing the accidental or the intentional transfer of CJI to those potentially unsecured devices.
It's like that extra lock on the already secure door. Every layer counts.
Exactly.
And finally, V6.0 puts a huge emphasis on the human element of security
Right.
through training and awareness requirements.
Remember how in V5.9 training was more of a suggestion?
Yeah.
Well, V6.0 makes it mandatory.
Okay.
Everyone with access to CJI has to undergo security awareness training.
Yeah.
And those in leadership positions, those LASOs,
Right.
require even more in-depth training.
No more pleading ignorance.
Right.
Everyone from the patrol officers to the IT staff needs to be on the same page when it comes to security.
And that training needs to go beyond the basics. It's
Right.
not just about recognizing phishing emails anymore.
Right.
It's about understanding the why behind the policy, how those seemingly small actions can have big consequences,
Yeah.
and how to proactively protect CJI in a constantly evolving threat landscape.
So it's about shifting the mindscape from checking the box to building a genuine culture of security.
Exactly, and that's where the real change happens.
Yeah.
V6.0 gives you the framework, but the lasting impact comes from the individuals who understand the importance of their role in safeguarding CJI
Right.
and actively contributing to a stronger, more resilient security posture.
Okay, so we've got the big picture changes, modernization, proactive auditing,
Right.
stricter controls on accounts and connections.
Yes.
But I'm curious, how does V6.0 address those specific real-world scenarios that law enforcement agencies face?
That's where the examples in the policy really come to life.
Okay.
Let's take a classic situation. A police department is implementing a new computer-aided dispatch CAD system.
Okay.
That's the heart of their operations.
Okay. I'm picturing the rows of computers, the dispatchers, coordinating the responses, the officers in the field, accessing critical information.
Right.
Lots of potential points of vulnerability there.
Exactly, and this is where V6.0 goes beyond just the technical controls. They highlight the importance of comprehensive personnel security controls.
Okay.
We're talking background checks for everyone who touches that CAD system,
Wow.
from the sworn officers to the contractors and even the janitorial staff.
Wow, they're really emphasizing that security is everyone's responsibility regardless of their role.
Absolutely.
But background checks are just the start, right?
Right. This department also implements a system of sanctions for those who violate the security policies
Okay.
and a schedule for regular security reevaluations of all personnel.
Got it.
They're building a culture where security is embedded in their DNA, not just an afterthought.
So it's about going beyond the checklist and creating an environment where security is an integral part of the daily operations.
Exactly.
But what about the challenges that technology throws at us?
Sure.
For instance, cloud computing is becoming essential for law enforcement.
Right.
But it also introduces new risks. How does V6.0 address that?
That's where Appendix G becomes your best friend.
Okay.
It dives deep into cloud security,
Okay.
offering best practices for everything from encryption key management to data protection and incident
So
response.
it's like a specialized guide for cloud security within the context of the CJIS requirements.
Exactly. They even highlight potential concerns that agencies might overlook. For
Mm,
example, they stress that just encrypting data in the cloud isn't enough.
right.
You also need to think about who controls those encryption keys.
Right.
Giving a cloud provider full control could be a major risk.
Okay, so it's about being smart about how we use the cloud and making sure we retain control over those critical security elements. I'm
Absolutely.
starting to see a pattern here.
Yeah.
V6.0 is all about thinking several steps ahead and building those layers of protection.
Exactly. And that applies even to technologies that have been around for a while.
Yeah.
Appendix G also gives practical tips for securing things like virtualization,
Okay.
VoIP, and mobile devices.
Okay.
For example, did you know they recommend disabling ad hoc Wi-Fi modes on mobile devices?
Oh, interesting.
It's a simple tweak, but it can close a significant security gap.
Those are the kind of actionable insights that IT professionals can use right away.
Absolutely.
It's not just about understanding the policy.
Right.
It's about turning those requirements into practical steps that actually make a difference.
And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable.
Yeah.
V6.0 is packed with information.
Right.
But by pulling out the key changes and highlighting the practical implications,
Yeah.
we're empowering IT professionals to become the true guardians of CJI.
Right. We've covered a lot of ground here, from those big picture shifts to the specific examples.
Yes.
But before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, I have one big question for you.
Okay.
If an IT professional walks away from this conversation with just one key takeaway about V6.0,
Right.
what should it be?
It's this. V6.0 demands we move beyond the check-the-box mentality.
Okay.
It's no longer enough to just meet the minimum requirements.
Right.
This policy is a call to action to build a culture of security in every aspect of law enforcement.
So it's about understanding the why behind the requirements.
Yeah.
Proactively seeking out vulnerabilities and constantly evolving our security practices to stay one step ahead of the threats.
Absolutely.
It's about taking ownership of security, not just for compliance, but for the integrity of the entire justice system.
Exactly. And that's the message we need to carry forward into the rest of our deep dive.
Well said. We've still got a lot to unpack, so let's take a quick break and we'll be right back to delve even deeper into the practical implications of CJIS Security Policy version 6.0.
Sounds good. You know, one of the things that really struck me as we were prepping for this deep dive is how much emphasis V6.0 puts on mobile devices.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Is a whole different world from when V5.9 was released.
Absolutely. Back then, mobile devices were just starting to make their way into law enforcement,
Right.
and the policy felt like it was playing catch-up.
Yeah.
Now it feels like V6.0 is acknowledging that smartphones and tablets are practically extensions of the agency's network.
Right. And they're not shying away from the security challenges that come with that. They're
Yeah.
laying down the law.
Okay.
Strong authentication and encryption are not negotiable.
Right.
No more connecting to public Wi-Fi hotspots without a VPN.
Yeah.
No more storing CJI on unencrypted devices.
So it's about bringing that same level of rigor that we apply to our servers and databases
Exactly.
to the devices that officers are carrying in their pockets.
Exactly. And they're not just talking about the technical controls, they're
Uh-huh.
also recognizing that user behavior is a huge factor in mobile security.
Yeah.
V6.0 really pushes for comprehensive training that goes beyond just telling officers to be careful.
Okay, so what would that kind of training look like?
Sure.
How do we move beyond those generic warnings and actually equip officers to use those mobile devices securely?
Imagine a training scenario where officers are presented with a fake phishing text message
Okay,
designed to look like it's from a legitimate source.
got it.
They have to make that split-second decision.
Okay.
Do they click the link or do they recognize the signs of a scam?
That's a great way to make the training relevant to their daily work.
Right.
It's not just about memorizing rules.
Exactly.
It's about building that instinct to spot those threats in real time.
And that instinct extends to physical security as well.
Yeah.
V6.0 reminds us that losing a mobile device is a serious security incident.
Right.
We need to treat those devices like mini vaults of CJI. Keep them physically secure and report any loss or theft immediately.
Speaking of security incidents, how does V6.0 approach incident response?
Sure.
Especially in the mobile world where data breaches can happen anywhere, anytime.
V6.0 is incredibly thorough when it comes to incident response.
Okay.
They've outlined detailed steps for everything from containing the breach
Right.
to notifying the right people.
Got it.
They're even emphasizing the importance of digital forensics, making sure
Okay.
we can track down the source of the compromise
Yeah.
and gather the evidence.
So it's not just about patching the hole.
Right.
It's about understanding how the attacker got in and what
Exact.
we can learn from that incident.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious, how do we apply these incident response procedures to a lost or stolen mobile device?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
V6.0 emphasizes the importance of remote wiping capabilities.
Okay.
So if a device goes missing, you can quickly erase any CJI it contains
Right.
before it falls into the wrong hands.
Makes sense.
And they're stressing the need for a comprehensive inventory of all mobile devices.
Right.
So you know exactly what's out there and what needs to be secured.
Okay, so it's about being prepared for the worst case scenario.
Right.
And having the tools and processes in place to minimize the damage.
Absolutely.
But shifting gears a bit, I know another area where V6.0 gets really specific is remote access.
Yeah.
With more people working remotely, it feels like the security perimeter is constantly expanding.
Absolutely. And V6.0 recognizes that they're really clamping down on remote access controls,
Yeah,
going way beyond the basic recommendations in V5.9.
got it.
They're mandating detailed documentation of every single type of remote access allowed,
Okay,
outlining the usage restrictions,
Right.
configuration requirements, and even implementation guidelines.
wow.
No more winging it when it comes to remote access.
So for IT professionals, this means we need to get granular.
Right.
We need a detailed inventory of every single system that allows remote access.
Yes.
Understand how it's configured,
Absolutely.
and make sure it's all documented.
Exactly. And documentation is just the first step.
Okay.
They're also mandating automated monitoring and control mechanisms to catch any suspicious activity in
Yeah.
those remote access sessions.
Got it.
Think intrusion detection systems,
Yeah.
network monitoring tools, and automated alerts that flag potential breaches in real time.
So we're not just setting up the rules.
Right.
We're actively enforcing them and making sure the remote connections are constantly monitored for any signs of trouble.
And of course, encryption is non-negotiable.
Right.
V6.0 is crystal clear that any remote access session has to be encrypted.
Okay.
Whether you're using a VPN TLS or other approved cryptographic mechanism,
Got it.
it's about wrapping that CJI in a digital shield, making sure it's protected even when it's traveling outside the agency's network.
So whether it's officers accessing databases from their patrol cars,
Right.
analysts working from home, or even contractors collaborating on cases remotely,
Yeah.
those connections need the same level of security as the systems inside the agency's walls.
Precisely. And that focus on the detail on those specific controls and requirements is what really sets V6.0 apart.
Yeah.
They're not just telling us what to do.
Right.
They're giving us the blueprint for how to do it, right?
Okay, so we've talked about mobile devices,
Yeah.
remote access, and the importance of strong security controls.
Absolutely.
But I'm curious, how does V6.0 approach the ever-evolving world of technology?
That's a great question.
Things are changing so fast, how do we even keep up?
That's one of the things I appreciate about this update.
Okay.
They acknowledge that technology is constantly changing.
Yeah.
And they're urging agencies to be adaptable.
Okay.
They provide guidance on specific technologies like virtualization, VoIP, and cloud computing,
Right.
recognizing that these tools can be incredibly valuable for law enforcement,
Right.
but they also present unique security challenges.
So let's take virtualization as an example.
Sure.
It's become pretty standard in data centers.
Right.
But how does V6.0 address the security concerns of running multiple virtual environments on the same physical hardware?
They emphasize the importance of strong isolation between the virtual machines,
Okay.
making sure a compromise of one doesn't bring down the whole system.
Got it.
They're also stressing the need for secure configuration of the hypervisor,
Right.
that software layer that manages the virtual environment.
Okay.
It's about treating that hypervisor like the foundation of your virtual security.
Right.
If it crumbles, everything else goes down with it.
So we're talking about robust access controls,
Yeah,
regular updates, and constant monitoring of the hypervisor to make sure it's not compromised.
absolutely.
It's another layer of security that IT professionals need to be aware of.
And it's the same approach with VoIP.
Okay.
They're highlighting the risks of eavesdropping and denial of service attacks,
Right.
and recommending encryption for VoIP traffic,
Okay.
secure configuration of the VoIP devices, and network segmentation to isolate the voice communications from other sensitive data.
It's like recognizing that the technology is great, but we can't just assume it's secure out of the box.
Exactly.
We have to build the security into every layer.
And that brings us back to the idea we've been discussing throughout this deep dive.
Yeah,
Security is a shared responsibility.
right.
V6.0 makes it clear that everyone from the officers using the mobile devices to the IT professionals managing the systems has a role to play in protecting CJI.
It's about recognizing that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And
Exactly.
we all need to be vigilant, proactive, and committed to the shared goal of safeguarding the information.
Absolutely.
That's crucial to the integrity of the justice system.
And it's about understanding that security is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
V6.0 provides the roadmap,
Yeah.
but it's up to each agency and each individual to take those steps to adapt to the evolving threat landscape and to continuously improve their security posture.
It feels like we've only just scratched the surface of V6.0,
Yeah,
but we're already seeing a huge shift in mindset.
right.
Moving from reactive security to something much more proactive and comprehensive.
It's like the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Right.
V6.0 is all about building that strong foundation of security,
Yeah.
recognizing the threats before they become breaches,
Right.
and creating a culture of vigilance throughout the agency.
And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable for IT professionals.
Absolutely.
It's not just about understanding the technical requirements.
Right.
It's about grasping the bigger picture and seeing how the pieces fit together to create a truly secure environment for CJI.
You know, as we've been talking about all these changes, I keep thinking about the practical challenges that agencies face when implementing a policy like this.
Yeah, for sure.
It's one thing to read the requirements, but it's another to actually put them into practice.
That's a great point. Let's say I'm an IT manager at a mid-sized police department.
Okay,
Where do I even begin?
sure.
What are some of the first steps I should be taking to get my agency on the right track with V6.0?
First and foremost, you need to conduct a thorough gap analysis.
Okay.
Compare your current security practices to the requirements of V6.0
Yeah.
and identify the areas where you fall short.
Okay.
This will give you a roadmap for the areas that need immediate attention.
So it's like taking an inventory of your security posture.
Exactly.
Figuring out your strengths, your weaknesses, and where you need to focus your efforts.
Exactly. And don't try to do it all at once.
Okay.
Prioritize the areas that pose the greatest risk to CJI,
Okay.
such as the systems with the most sensitive data
Right.
or those that are most vulnerable to attack.
So focus on those high-impact areas first.
Right.
The systems that would cause the most damage if compromised.
Right. And don't underestimate the importance of documentation.
Okay.
V6.0 is very specific about the need for detailed documentation of policies,
Okay.
procedures, system configurations, and
Okay.
even the rationale behind your security decisions.
So it's not just about doing the right things.
Right.
It's about proving that you've done them and being able to justify your approach.
Exactly.
That documentation is going to be essential for audits and compliance checks.
Absolutely. And as you're going through this process, remember to engage with your staff,
Yeah, for sure.
get their input, address their concerns,
Yeah.
and provide them with the training and support they need to adapt to the new requirements.
That's so important.
Absolutely.
Security is not just an IT issue, it's everyone's responsibility.
Right.
And by bringing everyone on board,
Yeah.
you're creating a culture where security is ingrained in everything they do.
And that's ultimately what V6.0 is all about. It's
Yeah.
about creating a culture of security within law enforcement agencies,
Right.
a culture where everyone understands the importance of protecting CJI,
Yeah.
where everyone is vigilant and proactive,
Right.
and where everyone is committed to continuous improvement.
So it's not just about checking boxes.
Exactly.
It's about building a foundation for long-term security that adapts and evolves as the threat landscape changes.
Exactly. And that's what will ultimately make the difference in protecting CJI
Right.
and ensuring that law enforcement agencies can continue to leverage the power of information technology to keep our communities safe.
Well said. It feels like we've covered a tremendous amount of ground in this deep dive,
We have.
from the nuts and bolts of the policy to the broader implications for law enforcement.
Yeah, it's been great.
But as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
I agree. This has been an incredibly insightful exploration.
It has.
And I hope it sparks some ideas and action plans for everyone listening.
Absolutely. So for those IT professionals who are feeling a bit overwhelmed by the scope of V6.0,
Yeah,
remember this, you're not alone.
you're not.
This is a journey we're all taking together.
Reach out to your peers, connect with the experts, tap into the resources available to you.
Yeah, great advice.
And most importantly, don't be afraid to ask questions and seek help when you need it.
Security is an indie sport.
It is.
And by working together, by sharing our knowledge and experiences, we can build a more secure future for law enforcement and the communities we serve.
And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into CJIS Security Policy v6.0.
Great stuff.
We hope you found it valuable and informative.
Remember, true security is an ongoing process, a journey, not a destination.
Well said.
Stay vigilant, stay proactive, and stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay secure.